Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of InkResearch.ca, Canada's first online financial news and research service, providing insider news and knowledge to investors. His website, CanadianInsider.com. Welcome back to the show, Ted.
Well, it's good to be back, Jim.
The U.S. equity markets took a pounding yesterday, up a bit today. What about the Canadian markets? Are they also in trouble, or at least interesting, as we might say?
Well, the S&P TSX Composite actually dipped into negative territory at the close on Wednesday. Now the Canadian Insider Index, which is a more mid-cap focused index that looks at 50 stocks that are preferred by insiders, it's still positive for the year, ever so slightly. But we're living in very uncertain times right now, given the shenanigans going on in Washington. What I mean by that is, you've got the New York Times releasing a story based off of a memo that no one's seen. Only, someone read them a memo that apparently the fired FBI director wrote after a meeting. And, so you've got these kind of out of the blue, kind of almost surreal news stories hitting the wire. That in itself wouldn't be enough to knock off the markets. What's the problem facing investors right now is, first of all, the U.S. markets are trading at very rich multiples. By Inc. data, the typical stock in the U.S. is trading at a 22.5 PE multiple, price earnings ratio. Traditionally that number's usually been more around 15, 16. And you've got a Federal Reserve that's raising interest rates. So as the price of risk goes up, when you've already, pushed stocks to really expensive valuation levels, when these stories hit, investors are, have to think, really start thinking twice about, do we really want to have all this exposure to the market when interest rates are rising? And then, of course, you never hear from this from the U.S. media, but there's the China factor. And whereas, when Bill Clinton had the Monica Lewinsky affair, and when you had Ronald Reagan with the Iran-Contra affair, they didn't have the same concerns about China as we have now. China wasn't even a player back in those days, and with China going through a tightening of credit conditions, they're providing a bit of a headwind here to markets. Whereas since 2008, China's been a very positive move on markets. So, we've got a real double whammy here. We've got some uncertainty with the Trump administration getting its agenda through because it's being distracted by all these bombshells out of left field from the media. And you've got China, which has been quietly under the radar in terms of North American media, tightening the belt with respect to credit conditions, and that's now starting we're starting to feel that. You look at the number of Canadian companies, they sold off on Wednesday. The copper-focused First Quantum, which is a Vancouver company, it dropped considerably. It underperformed the market on Wednesday. Teck Resources, very focused on China with respect to its coal, it underperformed the market. So the sell-off on Wednesday was not all about Donald Trump. Yes, he might have helped trigger it, but there's been some underlying undercurrents that investors are starting to reprice. It's May. People are thinking about holidays and maybe thinking about taking, well, they've obviously been thinking about taking some money off the table ahead of those holidays, not wanting to fully have risk on the table as the summer starts to approach here.
Well, we've had so many tops, the NASDAQ and S&P setting record highs recently. Where do you go from there?
Well, that's right. You've really got to believe that growth and innovation is taking a big move up, and you've got to believe that all these price earnings ratios of such high proportions are justified. And it's easier to do that when you've got a central bank that's cutting rates, pumping the system with money through QE. And yes, we still have the ECB and the Bank of Japan doing that, but the Fed isn't doing it. They're talking about raising rates. And you've got the Central Bank of China cutting back liquidity. So it's a real mixture of forces now at work. Yes, the U.S. is recovering. The data is still, mixed. If you want to, slightly positive, but still, there's always data that you can point to that's not so positive. But it's sure the U.S. is growing, but it's not growing in gangbusters. There's no economic boom in the United States to justify 22.5 PE multiples. What's been justifying 22.5 PE multiples is very low rates and a boom in China. Well, the boom in China is cooling down. The Fed, wants to raise rates, and investors are finally, I think, getting their heads around that it's going to be a little tougher to make money in the stock market and in asset markets in general under those conditions.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after the break.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario. With grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold, a drill program will commence this spring to test the numerous targets located by recent groundwork. For more information, visit our website, rmroyalty.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Ted Dixon. Ted, the U.S., I guess, has pulled the trigger on NAFTA and wants it renegotiated by the end of the year. First of all, why would they put a time limit on it when perhaps we have all the time in the world to do it?
Well, it's probably a negotiating strategy, and I would note, by the way, that one of the reports that I saw indicated that they wanted to get the softwood lumber dispute finished before they started negotiating NAFTA, and that helped BC forestry stocks uptick here. West Fraser Timber, is rallying quite strongly today. That's a member of the Canadian Insider Index, and insiders are putting their bets on softwood on lumber companies. When we do the rebalancing of the Canadian Insider Index on Friday, we've got Canfor's going into the index along with Canfor Pulp. So we've got a number of forestry-related stocks that will be in the index. So insiders are looking, are looking through the protectionist, trees here, and they're seeing the broader forest. So insiders seem to be upbeat about the prospect for the Canadian forestry area. And by the way, we do have a free report on CanadianInsider.com, which you can go to in the free download section, and you can download our one of our reports on the rebalancing that talks about the move of insiders into forestry stocks, really at the expense of energy stocks. So there are some optimistic themes that one can look at, and now it doesn't mean insiders are going to be right, but this sort of getting on with NAFTA is probably a positive sign. And may help stabilize the Canadian market. But, we'll have to see how things go, of course.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Ted Dixon. Ted, the situation in BC after the election of minority government, how's that affecting natural resource development in BC?
Well, it's too early to tell because we don't really know who's forming the government. We'll have to wait until next week to see if the Liberals can give it a good shot here if they win that one seat that on the island that's up for grabs. In general, though, I think looking at how things are playing out, and again, we talk about this in that report that your listeners can go and download for free on CanadianInsider.com. It looks like mining is probably going to be in pretty decent shape. At worst, maybe we're going to get some oversight, extra oversight, which is never, more red tape and regulations is never, a welcome prospect when you're trying to run a mining company. However, it could be a lot worse. The Green Party, nowhere in their platform do they talk about banning mining or shutting it down. They're talking about more oversight. So I think, in terms of mining, I think the mining industry can breathe a bit easier. You're going to hear a lot of noise about Kinder Morgan, the pipeline. I think that's more bluster than substance. I think the Green Party, they have to talk about Kinder Morgan. They have to be perceived to be opposing it. But at the end of the day, first of all, the decision's already been made, so they'd have to really spend a lot of capital to try and get that decision unwound. If they were to do a coalition with the NDP, if they're in a position to do that, that may be better, but it's very risky because the Angus Reid Institute poll that I saw, which was done in early May, the majority of British Columbians support the project, and the opposition is really clustered around certain, a group of seats in Vancouver and in other parts of the province. Believe it or not, there's a majority in favor of. So if they gave the BC Liberals a chance to go to the polls on Kinder Morgan, I think the BC Liberals would win. And that's not maybe the NDP and the Greens will make that gamble and force an early election on Kinder Morgan, but that would. I highly doubt it. I think that there's other big fish that the Green Party want to fry, including proportional representation. You can only get so many victories at a time, and for the long-term health of the Green Party, proportional representation is critical, and they need that more than they need to stop Kinder Morgan for their long-term health. But look, if they do a deal with the NDP, it's going to be short-term gain for long-term pain. They're going to get a few wins, but the NDP will crush them as a force in the next election if they give the NDP that chance. So the Greens I assume are going to be quite crafty about this. They're going to make a lot of noise, but don't let that scare you. Don't let their posturing on Kinder Morgan scare you. What they're really going to have to decide to do here is go for proportional representation. And they're not going to be able to get everything, and that's got to be their number one concern at this point.
Right, and if they went proportional, that would give them about 14% of the seats in the House.
Well, depending on how the system is, and that's a whole call we can have, on how do you do that, and it's not a slam dunk. I mean, the NDP are dropping hints that they would do without a referendum. Well, that would be the end of the NDP, I think, because if they just ran through a proportional representation system without people's input, look out, because there's no standard. Well, what are we going to do? We're going to double the number of MLAs? Well, who wants that? Are you, there's just too many questions there. So, it's going to be it's a big deal for the Greens, and Andrew Weaver is a pretty smart cookie, and unlike some politicians south of the border, I assume he's grounded firmly in reality, and that he will understand that they've got to set their priorities, and getting a PR through is their biggest priority.
Well, Alberta, having seen their first left-wing government elected in nearly 50 years, has decided enough is enough, and CTV's reporting the Wild Rose Party is going to merge with the Alberta Progressive Conservatives. Well,
that'll be good. They can have a policy, knockout election in Alberta, and of course, a lot will depend on how the oil market goes. But so far, the experience under the Notley government for the oil patch, I'm saying this as British Columbian, hasn't been that bad. I mean, if they can get Kinder Morgan through, that'll be something that no Conservative administration, either federally or provincially, has been able to do. So, we'll have to see how that plays out. I think it's early days to see how that group is going to be formed, but for sure, it's good for the province of Alberta because it's going to keep the NDP's more ambitious socialist aspirations in check. They're not going to be able to breathe as easy. So it's a very positive development for public policy in Alberta. Just as we can hope that the development here with the Green Party, taking some of the ideological steam out of the left and focusing it more on policy issues than us versus them, which was, when you had the NDP and the Liberals slugging it out, it's helping the policy, I think, quality of policy debate in BC. So it's a positive development probably in both provinces for uniquely different reasons because the provinces are quite different. But, again, we'll have to see how the dynamic folds in British Columbia. Certainly, if we have an NDP Green coalition, that would be a lot more of a risk for resource development in the province than a Liberal slim majority or a Liberal minority government, which would have to deal with the Greens, I would assume, one piece of legislation at a time. So we'll have to see, but at this point, I think the mining industry can at least carry on, and maybe they'll have to deal with a bit more red tape, but the industry's unfortunately used to doing that.
The national carbon tax policy is about to be rolled out today. Does BC have anything to worry about?
Well, no, not at this point. But again, the Greens may want to jump on board with that. But this is putting the Greens in an interesting spot. They want to stop Kinder Morgan publicly, anyways, and yet accelerate our carbon tax in British Columbia to meet what the national government is laying out. And Christy Clark managed to get the carbon tax frozen at least until 2020. Now, if they were to somehow block Kinder Morgan, the whole national climate change strategy would be in complete disarray. You would have Alberta walk away from their commitments, and so you would have a case where BC is putting up their carbon tax, and Alberta is would probably walk away and say, we're not doing any of this because you're taking away our pipeline. So it would be it could be a very destabilizing situation if the BC Greens and the NDP overplay their hand on Kinder Morgan. You could have a situation where the BC carbon tax is putting resource development at an a competitive disadvantage to Alberta, because I would suspect Alberta would play hardball, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Rachel Notley say we're not playing with it in this game anymore.
Has the carbon tax in BC cost business development here, with them going to Washington State where they don't have a tax?
Well, look, the carbon tax is designed to discourage businesses that are greenhouse gas heavy. So on the one hand, we probably have lost some of those jobs, but on the other hand, the money has gone to high tech industries and some tax reductions, which has a broad effect in the economy. So, it's easy to sort of point to, okay, well, over here we've lost some jobs, but we are gaining jobs in other areas, and that was the point of the tax to begin with. You can't cut carbon emissions without somebody feeling the pain, and to think otherwise is naive. I guess the everyone's favorite tax reform is where all the tax increases are being felt by someone else, and you get the benefit. But unfortunately, that cannot be a realistic outcome across the whole province.
Is the provincial government and the federal government paying enough attention to BC's leadership in artificial intelligence and quantum computing?
Well, again, I think it really depends how much you expect government to pick winners and losers. My view on all of this is that the government should basically reduce the personal tax load on people going to work. So scientists, whether you're a scientist, whether you're a contractor, building homes, you don't want to penalize that person from actually going to work, to doing work on quantum computing, to putting up that next multifamily unit that has to be built. You want to encourage people to go to work, but yet we continue to tax people going to work. And the Green Party and NDP want to actually up the success tax. They want to increase the burden on human capital, successful human capital. That would be a total step in the wrong direction. So from that, if we can just get governments away from doing things like that, then that would be great.
Well, I think one of the reasons why Washington State is such a leader in computers is that they don't have income tax at the state level.
Well, that's right. And they're very competitive with California on that front. California is very expensive, so California benefits from this critical mass in Silicon Valley. However, if they didn't have that, they'd be fighting Washington State, and Washington State has built its critical mass. Yes, they have Microsoft that's been a big catalyst for that, but their tax system is also helping them along the way. So. The BC Liberals, have been dealt a big blow here, but if they can sharpen their policy game and, regroup and, they have a fighting chance here to, storm back and live another day, particularly given the high tax policies that are associated both with the NDP and the Green Party. So it'll be very interesting. I wouldn't count out the BC Liberals by any stretch of the imagination. They've got a lot of openings that their opponents have given them. Now the BC Liberals just have to sharpen their policy pencils and take advantage of those openings.
Ted, thank you so much for chatting with us.
It's great to be back, Jim.
My guest has been Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of InkResearch.ca, his website, CanadianInsider.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. If you have any questions for the show or for our guests, you can email us at info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.